Most young people are taught how to work for money, but very few are taught how to build ownership. Through football, I learned discipline, accountability, and leadership under pressure. But I also realized something important. Talent by itself is not enough. Young people need mentorship. They need a vision. They need opportunities to learn the skills that can create long-term success beyond sports.
As an educator and a real estate investor, I spent years working with students who are motivated and full of potential, but many have never been exposed to the principles that build wealth and ownership. Students are often taught how to earn income, but not how to build access. That's why we created Keys and Cleats.
Keys and Cleats is more than motivation. It's a movement focused on discipline, leadership, entrepreneurship, and ownership. We want students to understand that success does not stop at the game. Whether they become athletes, entrepreneurs, investors, or leaders in the community, we want them to think bigger about what's possible for the future.
Our program combines the lessons learned through sports with real-world education. We help students build confidence, leadership skills, and an ownership mindset. Because wealth is not just something people hope for, it's something that can be built through knowledge, discipline, and opportunity.
One conversation can change a student's direction. One opportunity can change a family's future.
And one lesson about ownership can create impact for generations. That's why Keys and Cleats matter.
When partners and sponsors support Keys and Cleats, they're investing in the next generation of leaders.
They're helping create access, opportunities, confidence, and lasting impact.
Discipline opens doors.
Ownership builds wealth. Welcome to Keys and Cleats, where discipline meets ownership.
From football to real estate to education, and I think that it's powerful to see someone who thinks like you, who looks like you, who believes like you, paving the way and reminding you that you can do it.
What this means to me, it means a lot because Immokalee is a very small community, and usually when people come down, it's usually to educate us and to tell us how much opportunities we have, but they don't always tell us the steps to take to reach those opportunities. And learning not about just sports but real estate as well kind of opened my eyes to what else I could really do instead of just having my vision dead set on one dream, I guess.
Well, friend, I'm so delighted you've joined us across your Christian television network. You just saw a sneak peek of our in-studio guests. We're honored to have, traveling from all over the country, like to welcome Marvin Chapman and Kameran Kinchens. Honored to have you both in studio.
Yes, glad to be here.
Well, thank you. And you're making a difference with Keys and Cleats. I like the name of that, and I'll start with you, Marvin. You're both co-founders of this wonderful organization. Talk about what inspired that. What made you say, man, we need to do something here?
From being inside of the classroom and also being a real estate investor, I recognized there was a disconnect with students not having the ability to know about ownership. A few times I went to a few properties with Kameran, and I realized, I asked him questions about real estate. At the time he probably didn't understand anything about real estate, and I realized, when I'm dealing with kids inside of the classroom, they don't know anything about real estate and just wealth building and ownership. So I thought it would be a great idea to start a business model with, trying to, give back to students as far as something that was different.
And so you teach social studies in the classroom, you're realizing, hey, there's a disconnect. What made you realize that, hey, I need to actually teach this to help the young people? Why did you feel it was so important today?
Myself, growing up, I knew nothing about real estate, knew nothing about ownership. Growing up, it was something that was just a disconnect, something that we don't talk about inside of the school, even in today's society. So I thought it would be a great idea to, just to give back, with the wisdom and the knowledge, and make sure you teach it in a sense where kids can understand it. I think, just being relatable to kids and, just making sure they understand it from, a dumbed down perspective.
Yeah.
Could I add something?
Yeah, go. Yeah, absolutely.
I think also the biggest thing with it is, like you said, dumbing it down, but knowing it's not that difficult. Once you, start to gain a passion for it, gain an interest to it, it won't be so hard. And I think, making money should be anybody's interest.
Yeah.
So once they figure out that it's not hard to even get into or to learn about, as long as you put a little effort in it, it should go smooth.
That's very good, Cameron. You know, it makes me think of an old saying, God don't mind you having money as long as money don't have you.
Yeah,
So
wow.
if you
I
can
like
help,
that.
if you can help others, and I see that with what you're doing. Now, Cameron, for those that say, wow, you know, who is this Kameran Kinchens guy? I've heard of him maybe, or maybe they haven't. Those are watching across the Christian Television Network. And by the way, if you're watching on a digital media platform, like it, share it, tell your in-laws, tell your outlaws for that matter. This is very good information they're going to hear. Now, Cameron, talk about you played, tell them where you played high school ball, college, and obviously you're less than 1% at the pro level, now playing with the Los Angeles Rams. Talk about your journey.
Yeah, so I started from high school at Miami Northwestern, you know, like you said before, just a powerhouse and, you know, produced a lot of players. And then went to the University of Miami, went there for 3 years, and then got drafted to the LA Rams.
So you went out a year early,
Yeah.
and more importantly than your athletic skills, 3.8 GPA,
Yep.
academics. So you've always been. How has the discipline of academics and discipline of athletics helped to prepare you for, if you will, life beyond sports?
Yeah, something my family just kind of grew, you know, instilled into me, you know, growing up was just being always in my books, you know, knowing that you get your degree, you get your diploma, that's half the battle, you know, and that's something that you don't want to, you know, have held against you if you don't have it when you meet all the requirements. And another thing was, you know, Coach Cristobal used to kind of say it to me all the time in Miami was, how you do anything is how you do everything. So how I portray myself and how I, you know, put my best foot forward on a football field, got to do the same in the classroom, got to do the same in life, you know, and it just continue to grow in that aspect.
I love that, and I think about so many people sometimes focus on one facet of their life, which, you know, if you play 3 years of college ball, even you're fortunate at that level, but then to be able to play it at the, you know, usually it only lasts 3 years. So having a well-roundedness is so important, and I think that's great. And I think you also having that background as a school teacher helping to instill the value into your son. That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
And talk about, Marvin, if you will, as an educator and real estate investor, what was the thing that, you know, one of the things that you always hear people say, you got to have your credit score to get a property. What's your perspective on that?
I think that's a very interesting question because growing up, you know, when you do know about anything doing real estate, you're thinking about the traditional model as far as you got to have a, you know, a certain credit score, you got to have a certain, you know, amount in your bank account. When I was exposed to, you know, wholesaling real estate and just, you know, subject to real estate, you know, just the basic forms of real estate, the main people talked about, you know, you don't need an amazing credit score, you don't need, you know, a whole bunch of money in the bank. And I think it's a more realistic way to get in because not everybody comes with, you know, a certain amount of, you know, money in their bank account or a credit score. So how can you, you know, win at life when you don't have those things?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, entering into real estate, you know, through wholesaling and through the basic investor route, you know, it's the perfect route for someone because not everybody, you know, has the same opportunities.
And I like the fact that you know, Keys and Cleats tries to help provide that financial literacy. I'll ask you this, Marvin, but I'll also want you to chime in on this, Cameron. What is it that makes Keys and Cleats different from the traditional financial literacy type programs?
One thing that I can say is that in the classroom and also just anybody that knows me, I'm very transparent. You know, and I think being transparent and being relatable to, you know, the youth especially is important. You want to be able to, you know, give them information so that they can understand it. So whether that's through rap music, whether it's through, you know, whatever form that you understand it, I'm going to try to find a way to, you know, to break it down to you. And like I say, you know, just being, you know, transparent, you know, I have, you know, made money in real estate, I lost money in real estate. You know, even, you know, just the financial journey, you know, you up and you down. So you got to be able to figure out life, you know, when you win it and also when you lose it. Most people, when they talk about financial literacy, they talk about real estate or just business in general, entrepreneurship, they tell you about the wins. Everybody telling you you're going to make $10,000, $1 million, you're going to make $500,000. You know, I'm going to tell you about the situation when you're going to lose in this game. And that, you know, and those things, you know, help motivate you and get you ready for, you know, the real world.
And really, they can be life lessons if you learn from those mistakes, if you will, right? And Cameron, what's your perspective on this financial literacy program?
I think the biggest thing, like you said, the transparency. You know, the thing of we don't know everything.
That's good.
You know, we're not here to say we know everything, but it's just off of the, you know, like you said, the wins and losses he has, you know, just to give that feedback, because I think that's the realest thing you can do for any youth is is learning to know the ups and downs and knowing it's not going to be all up. You know,
Right.
that'd be unrealistic to say, oh yeah, as soon as you hop in, you're going to just make $100,000, everything's going to go smooth.
Right.
You know, it's about, I think that's what brings both sides to it, of that motivational part and also the realistic part of, okay, this is the information we can give to you to help you, you know, begin.
That's good. You know, and I think this generation cries out for that authenticity. And even no matter what generation you are, I think when you're authentic and you help provide, you know, a perspective like this, you're actually saying to people, hey, look, I don't have it all figured out, but let's journey on this together.
Exactly.
And I think that's a very good way of, when people feel there's collaboration, if you will, to learn, they're more apt to learn, I think, you know, and want to learn because they feel like they're not just being told information, but they have someone actually giving some practical life experience, if you will.
Yeah. And then one quick thing I want to chime in is that just recently, this was about 3 weeks ago, I had an 8th grade student tell me, no, she was a 9th grade student.
Yeah.
She told me I was the first teacher, because it was something going on with the grade book, and I gave her a bad grade, not bad, gave her a bad grade.
Yeah.
I put an F in the grade book, and she actually did the assignment. So just a quick lesson. She said I was the first teacher in her life, you know, that ever apologized and told her I was wrong. So, you know, that's just me being transparent. I'm very, you know, human with the youth. You know, I tell them, you know, I'm having a bad day. You know, you just be upfront with people, and that's why kids, you know, and the young adults, they like you better.
Because they know you're sincere. And if you're doing a grade like that, it's because you only want the best for them, but you had a perspective. But then after communication, if you will. Speaking of communication, you're communications major, right?
Yes.
And so why is it so important? What's the message you want to communicate to businesses and potential partners to partner with Keys and Cleats, Kameran?
I think the biggest thing is joining our journey. And like we were saying before, we don't know everything, but throughout this process, we're going to show you how we continue to learn, continue to grow, and continue to prosper. So it's like, you know, you just joining, you know, the prosperity with us.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things you're doing is you're going into places where people may not have the resources or have the opportunity to have financial literacy programs. And so I just want to encourage those that are watching across the Christian Television Network, you can go to the information on the screen to learn more about their, you know, what they're doing to reach out and to help people who may not always get that opportunity. And that's, I appreciate you using your platforms because you don't have to do it, you know, and especially, you know, you playing at the level you are at professional football, you're trying to make a difference and help people. And really what it ultimately does is impact and change lives. And so I appreciate the fact that Kameran and you know, your father and you both are in this joint effort together. I kind of love it that a father-son team is working together to help make a difference. I think that's awesome. So I just wanted to thank you all.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, let me ask you this, if you will, and I'll start with you, Kameran. What can students expect when they attend a Keys and Cleats outreach event? I know you're here in Southwest Florida to do something, but what in general, what's the takeaway you want people to experience when they come to an outreach or an event that you all put on? And I'll also ask you that, Kameran.
Okay.
I would say authenticity. I would say relatability. I would say you know, talking about a subject or a business model that not everyone is talking about. Even you know, 10 years ago when you mentioned, you know, wholesaling real estate and certain forms of real estate, it was people that's been in, like you know, brokers and title companies. They didn't know what was going on, and now, you know, because of you know Google and, you know, different information, there's more information out there. But we're still talking about a subject or a business model that still not a lot of people, you know it's not traditional, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, I'm giving you something that's you know, that's different. And I think the most important thing is we're talking about subjects that we are doing in real life, and that something that is authentic. You know, Kameran is, you know, speaking to the youth, you know about, you know, growing up in the inner city, you know, high school, college, and NFL, the journey, and he's going to be telling you the good and the bad about the, you know, the journey, like, you know, the mistakes he made, the doubt he made, and I was right there along with him, you know, to understand, you know, what he was going through. And then myself, you know, I'm talking about, you know, I'm speaking to the youth, which I do every day, and I'm also talking about a subject, you know, that I'm inside right now, closing deals, and, you know, and going through the ground, the ups and the downs.
Yeah. That's so important. And what is your perspective of when somebody comes to one of the outreaches that you're doing? And, you know, I think it's awesome that you're taking the time to do it.
Yeah, I think something crazy. It was about 2 weeks I was in church, and it was all about, you know, helping people to join the Christian faith. And I think the biggest thing that happened with that was all about, you know, not overstepping and just all about planting your seed. So I think that's the biggest thing with us, about planting your seed. We're not saying, you know, you have to do this or, you know, it's something that you must get into. But it's also, like I was saying before, about planting that seed of interest, you know, not to, okay, do exactly what we say, but to allow what we say to enter your mind, and then you go do some more research on it. You find out how, you know, you can use it and apply it to your life or help somebody else, or, you know, get what I'm saying? So it's all about just taking that next step, or just understanding it is other outlets.
Exactly.
And what you're doing is you're giving principles for everyday life, and you're saying, hey, whether you use this in business or whatever you know, whatever God has called you, if you will, you're giving them, like you said, the seeds that will help them to propel them to say, hey, you know, I like what my wife says. She says, you know, never tell people what to do.
Exactly, I agree.
You know, opinions are to be respected, but they don't supersede ultimately God's word. And so, in a sense, what you're saying is the principles of, here's a seed, and you decide what you want to do with it. Do you want to run with it or not? And certain people have everybody's fingerprint is different, so everybody has a different way that, where God, how they'll raise them up and use a platform. And speaking of platforms, why was it so important for you, Kameran, to use your platform as what you're doing through, you know, Keys and Cleats, and just you as a person?
Yeah, I think about using my platform as strictly motivation. You know, didn't come from the, you know, the most opportunities or the best opportunities, you know, would say, you know, my parents always helped me to put my best foot forward, and it's all about, you know, people with, you know, not the best situations. You know, they could have, you know, not as good a situation as I had, or the support cast that I had, just to know they're able to do something. You know, they're able to turn the next page and don't worry about what was in the past, or you know, what you was given, but what you given and what you use it to do. You know, it's all about, you know, I think that's the biggest thing with anybody, because even when we was reading the scripts, and the biggest thing was what my dad said was like, you seen many people have the opportunities, but when it came to be, they didn't use it right, or they didn't, you know, how can you say it?
They didn't take advantage
of the opportunity. Yes, that's the biggest thing. And it's like, I want them to know that, you know, one thing I always read about is never care about embarrassment, you know, face your fears. So it's like, if you never take that step out, or that, or jumping off that ledge, if some people would say, you will never know where you can go in life. So I think that's the biggest thing, it's just encouragement.
That's good, Kameran. Now talk about, if you will, the process of endurance as an athlete, and how it may even relate to life, especially at your level, because I think, you know, you're number 5 for the LA Rams, used to be. And a little side note, I think you broke a 98-year-old record in the NFL with a 103-yard return against the Seattle Seahawks, which is pretty awesome. So as in your rookie year, you know, and so you have tremendous skill on the football field. But talk about, they see you shining on game day, but the process, if you will, the endurance process. It's just all mental. You know, even the game of football, most people say it's 80 mental, 20% physical. That's all it is in your mind. You know, that's powerful.
And I think the biggest thing, like my dad was telling me before we started, was just stand in your book, you know, praying every day, get on your knees, you know, to give thanks.
That's good.
And, you know, I think my biggest thing is, you know, just not being content where I'm at, you know, always trying to get better, but just having that appreciation to know, like, somebody else, you know, do whatever to get in your spot, you know, and not in a bad way or in a negative way, but just to know that, you know, you have a lot more to give, and when days be bad, you know, it could be better. But the thing is, you know, you've been given another opportunity to put your best foot forward.
You know, when I hear you talk, and, you know, and I'm hearing him say this, Marvin, I'm thinking about how attitude, it determines a lot of times your mindset. And if you have a victim mindset, you stay defeated. But if you have a victor mindset, that's what you're saying. I mean, because you're a world-class athlete, but you have a mindset to be like, hey, I can be the best at this scenario. So maybe you're watching, you're not a pro athlete, but wherever your sphere of influence is, you can take that same principle. And I think that's stuff they'll learn at Keys and Cleats, right?
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. And also, you know,
Yeah.
one thing I want to chime in, and I'm not just,
please,
you know, I'm
please.
not just saying this because of, you know, we in a Christian network.
Yeah.
But you'll be surprised that myself and even Kameran, you know, we from both sides, you know, because you know he have a mother's side and also his father's side. We both, you know, we heavy into our faith. We heavy into, you know, the where I've been going to church my whole life, and also with him. So I was very proud of him. You know, his first year he was going through some adversity. You know, when he first entered the NFL.
Sure.
And one day I called him, and he was, he was speaking with his chapel, and he was like, seeking some therapy. So, all of those things are very, very important that you feel like as a father, from his mother's side and also from his father's side, like, okay, like you did right. Because one thing about life, you're going to go through that adversity. So I was so proud of him, like, and this have nothing to do with football, nothing to do with school, that you understand that you went through some adversity, and the first person you went and suck is God, because at the end of the day, you got to have some faith, you got to have some grit, and that's where, everything comes from. At the end of the day, you can run from a lot of things, but you got to go, have a conversation with God. You got to go seek God to get through your adversities.
And that's so good, Marvin. I'm thinking about, the Bible says the race is not to the swift, but to them that endure to the end. So it's not how fast you get to the destination. It is a journey. It is a process.
Exactly.
And when you have a heart of humility saying, hey, I want to be thankful, like you said a minute ago, Kameran, that allows you the capacity to say, hey, the essence of who I really am as a spirit being first. God created me, and I got to get connected to my power source. It's like the power of electricity. The light don't come on unless I'm connected to the power source. Well, there's a lot of things we can do in our strength, but with God, all things are possible, right? To them that believe, it says. And so, and I think it talks about, even what you said, it's about a belief system. That's the mindset, right? Talk about the importance of a belief system. Why is that so important, Kameran?
It's just something that, you're giving into something that's bigger than you. I think that's the biggest thing. And when doubt sets in your mind, when fear sets in your mind, when embarrassment sets in your mind, you have something to fall back on to know, like, it doesn't mean anything. It's something. It's light at the end of the tunnel. Knowing that, one thing I pray for all the time is, through the ups and downs, I can still lean on you. I'm guided by you. Because the biggest thing is like, I don't know if you even seen it, but when we was over there, we had like a so-so take or not a great take, I smile because it's also a point to every bad thing won't last forever.
That's right.
And it's not saying be okay with it, still be the best you can be, but just knowing that he got you, being able to lean on him, being able to just understand that. And I think one of my, our pastor for our team, Chapel, Pastor Kev, one thing he always say is, you don't question God when he does something great for you. So don't question him when he does something that you might not, understand.
Amen.
And especially when people ask for strength all the time, they expect to just instantly get muscles when he puts weights in front of you to lift. So,
wow, I never thought about that.
Yeah, it's so true. And I love what you just said about when it's bigger than you. I think a sign when God is in something, it has to be bigger than you because you have to depend on him to do it, right? Yeah. Otherwise, if you did it in your strength, you probably usually fail miserably, right? And so that's a great.
It's something else I always love. Yeah. My uncle, me and my uncle always talk about it, and it's I have it in my phone and I read it all the time, but it was just like, God is firing you from doing this job because you're doing a horrible job at it. Because you always, when you try to take things into your own control, it never ends out good.
It's so good.
Yeah.
So good, yeah. And Marvin, as you think about Keys and Cleats and your heart to want to help people, and both of you, but I want to ask you this. What is the ultimate takeaway that you want people to experience when they connect with Keys and Cleats?
I just want you to have something different, something that's, I think most passionate about. It's something that, myself and my son is very passionate about.
Yeah.
And again, it's from our own element. We're not trying to do nothing that we're not natural about. So I just want you to have an experience. I want you to gain knowledge, and most importantly, after we give you the tools that we think that can help you out in life. We want you to, apply it to your own business, because we realize that not everybody want to be in real estate. Not everybody even want to be into sports. You could want to be a nurse. You could be whatever particular career you want to be in. But we want you to apply the principle of hard work. That's one thing that I commend about Kameran You know, a lot is he outworks everybody else.
Yeah.
A lot of athletes have skills, but he works hard. I remember doing a small story. I remember doing COVID. The world was shut down.
Yeah.
And nobody was doing nothing. Kameran was out 5, 6 a.m. You know, working out by himself, lifting weights and doing different things. The whole world was shut down. We even had to tell him, my wife and I had to tell him, hey, you know, come inside. You know, it's COVID out there. But you know, like I said, you know, so. We want you to, no matter what career you choose, no matter what you know, job or business you choose, you know, work hard than the next person. So.
And you were an All-American defensive back, safety in 2022 after your sophomore year, right? I mean, that's almost unheard of at your second year of college football. But it's that discipline, it's that commitment to do something. Now, you have your slogan is creating generational wealth.
Yes.
And you obviously are giving principles when they come to the Keys and Cleats of outreaches and events. But what do you see is creating generational wealth?
I think the biggest thing is understanding it's bigger than now. You know, one thing with the youth, which, you know, I always try to tell them is, never buy into the social media world. You know, everything is not what it seems. You know,
so good.
You know, all the flashy stuff is cool, yes, and not saying not to, you know, enjoy life at all. You know, take your trips. You know, buy nice things for yourself, but just knowing to have that discipline sometimes to say, I'm saving this for a bigger purpose later. I'm saving this for, you know, 10 years down the line, 5 years down the line, 20 years down the line, you know, to build for, you know, the next generations, which is generational wealth, you know, knowing that I'm setting my kids up, you know, for a better future.
That's amazing. You know, you're actually what you're talking about is legacy. And I think ultimately that's what they're going to do. Well, I just thank both of you for your time, you know, and what you're doing to make a difference in people's lives. I want to thank those of you watching across your Christian television network. Do it like these wonderful brothers right here that are making, in your sphere of influence, that are making a difference. You can be that same person. So I just again say thank you. Make sure and connect with them. Go to their website, get engaged. Until next week, same time, same place. We'll see you soon across your Christian television network.